Mm.
Hello, everyone. I am Daniela Saioni. So I got to meet the wonderful Bruce Horak, who you see right here, like maybe 2
Hello.
months ago on a Zoom. Thankfully,
Could be, yeah. Could be 2 months. Who knows? Time is elastic now, isn't it? I mean,
oh
could
my
be
God, it
last
sure is.
week.
Yeah, it really flies. The amazing Rebecca Northen, who's one of your collaborators, was so kind. I posted on my Facebook group, help, I'm going to be playing a blind character in an acting class and I would love to talk to someone. She's like, I know a legally blind actor. How about that? And then I was so wonderful. It was so wonderful of you to coach me, and thank you for that. So for
Oh, my
those who
pleasure.
don't know, I was shocked that I had never heard of you, Bruce, because you're so prolific. And I think a lot more people probably are going to know about you in the months ahead with everything you've got going on in life. But I was blown away. Bruce Horak has been in the Canadian theater industry, not only theater. So Bruce is an actor, singer, dancer, composer, not dancer. I said dancer. I was going to make a joke about that and said, don't you dance?
I have danced before in shows. Yeah, yeah. It's true. My dancing
uh,
scarecrow in The Wizard of Oz is the stuff of legend.
and a visual artist. And most recently, so last month he was premiering. Well, that wasn't your TV premiere, but it was a big premiere of Star Trek: Strange New Worlds, where you play Chief Engineer Hemmer. Oh my God!
The
So I can't
guy.
wait to talk
Yeah.
to you about all of the things, Bruce. Is there anything you want to say up front? Did I miss anything with that intro?
No, I think you covered it. I mean, it's pretty vast and vague, and also Canadian. So this is why you've never heard of me. Uh, and as Canadian artists, I mean, we really have to we got to spread the net far and wide in order to keep going in the industry because it's a comparatively small market, and really from the start of my career, it was about not sitting around waiting for the phone to ring for someone to call you up and offer you a job because there just aren't that many of them. And you don't turn around everywhere and everyone's an actor. Not every waiter in Canada is a aspiring actor. But we certainly in my career, it's been about creating my own work, and it's been about finding new and exciting ways to challenge myself artistically, creatively, and then looking at barriers and things like that, and finding a way to challenge them, overcome them, or get smacked down. Boom.
We all relate to the SmackDown on this channel. We're
You gotta
all
fail. You gotta fail
yeah,
forward.
yeah. I didn't even realize I had seen you on stage because I was one of the many people who saw Blind Date, Rebecca's
Ah,
improvised theater show, and I
yes.
didn't even realize you were visually impaired because you were whipping around the stage like it was nothing.
Well, we got a bit of time to learn the space, and that show in particular it's structured improv. So we had the structure of where the show might go or would go, so we were able to kind of navigate around that. There were always surprises, of course, because it's improvisation. But for me, it was really about just learning the space and getting it into my body. So, and knowing where stuff was backstage. So if I've got to go off and grab a prop really quickly, I've memorized where it's going to be.
Oh.
Um, yeah, blind date. I mean, that's the start of a whole other tangent, really.
Oh, we'll get back there because that is such a you're so prolific in that part of Canadian theater in a very tough part of Canadian theater, which is improv and clown. And you have studied clown, right?
Yeah, I sort of got into clown a bit sideways, really. Um, my background in theater was I went to a conservatory program in Calgary for 2 years. I primarily went in there thinking I was going to be a writer, but I got bit by the acting bug, and I kept getting cast in roles, and generally as the old guy because of my voice. And then Mount Royal College in Calgary led directly into Shakespeare in the Park. So I would spend my summers doing outdoor Shakespeare shows. And then the winter times I was touring with a company in Calgary called Quest Theatre, which is a children's theater company. And I met Rebecca Northen in 1995 doing Shakespeare in the Park, and she had been training at Loose Moose Theatre with Keith Johnstone and Dennis Cahill doing improvisation and theater sports, maestro, things like that. So she sort of, I'd always wanted to try it, but I was scared witless. But she dragged us out there to try it, and I got bit by that bug, the improvisation thing. And that was really my background was kind of in Johnstonian improv. And I think it was probably 93, 94. I went up to the Edmonton Fringe Festival and saw this clown duo called Mump and Smoot, who are kind of Canadian clown royalty. They do dark clown, edgy clown, if you will. Really funny stuff. And the first time I saw them, I'm like, this is exactly what I want to do. When I moved to Toronto in 2001, Mike Kennard, who was Mump of Mump and Smoot, put out a call. He was putting together a show of clowns and bouffons, and kind of crashed the audition, having no idea what was expected. They were looking for a clown turn. I had no idea what this even was. So got like a very quick little coaching session with a friend of mine who'd had a lot of clown experience, and went in and tried this thing. And Mike said, listen, you've got Johnstonian improv, and it's really just spokes on the same wheel of performance. So let's go for this. So he cast me in that show, and that's where I really got immersed in the Toronto clown community. And that show, I was cast as one of the bouffons, which are the sort of darker, twisted, physically deformed clowns in the show. And the character I created for that was called Foof, who was this sort of, it looked like the bottom half of his body had been twisted around, so I had like a front bum and all kind of bumps and whatever. And his only trick was that he would do this thing with his hands where it would look like they'd kind of twist her. Anyway, that was about it. But I would take that clown and I would go and do like 5-minute stand-up acts, trying to, this clown that he would come up from hell and try to convince an audience member to come back to hell with him. That was kind of his MO. And one night I showed up to do my clown Foof, and they told me I had to change the name because there was another clown on the bill named Foo, and it was too close, and she had seniority, so I changed my clown's name. So I decided to call him Cancer. And
Oh, really?
yeah, well, I had lost most of my eyesight to cancer when I was a baby.
Right.
I had retinoblastoma, so I'd lost over 90% of my eyesight to cancer, and I'd also lost my father to cancer probably just about a
Oh.
year and a half or 2 years before, and so I was having a real hate on for cancer that day. And I thought, it would be ridiculous if Cancer was trying to seduce the audience and trying to get someone to take him home. And after I did that very first turn as Cancer, this fellow came up to me afterwards and said it was the most amazing thing he'd ever seen. He'd been uh, fighting cancer for a couple of years, and his family wouldn't talk about it. They wouldn't even say the word. And here he found himself in the audience shouting at Cancer, telling Cancer to go screw himself and all this stuff. And he felt this incredible catharsis. And so he said, you've got to keep doing this. So flash forward about a year and a half, and Rebecca and I had sat down and decided that we were going to do a full show of Cancer called This is Cancer, or An Intimate Evening with Cancer, I think is what we called it originally. And we developed a 75-minute piece where Cancer, the living embodiment of the disease that had taken my eyesight and my father, comes out to kind of plead his case, if you will. It goes horribly awry. The show ends with an audience member coming up on stage with a foam pool noodle and beating the tar out of me. Incredibly cathartic for them, physically demanding for me. And, based on the principles of spontaneous theater, which is a structured improvisational format where it's very much about the audience, it's very much direct address, it's very much a conversation between the performer and the audience, who are the guest, who are there to hopefully have a good time. And the feedback for that particular show is overwhelmingly positive, and people would leave the theater expecting, certainly expecting an amount of catharsis, expecting a story of cancer, a story of hope, and a story of triumph. But most people really left there feeling like perspectives had changed, and that was a huge part of what This Is Cancer became.
That's incredible. I had no idea. I wish I had seen that. I have done a lot of fundraising for Gilda's Club with live shows.
Ah, yes, yes, yes.
And after I started doing that, I had a cancer scare. It did not ultimately end up being cancer, but it really, it really puts your life in perspective, doesn't
Oh
it?
my God. Yeah, yeah. Well, I think at one point Cancer had a top 10 list of the best parts about getting cancer. And one of them is, putting your life in perspective, but also finding out who your real friends are. But anyway, there's a multitude
Yes,
of
I
good
noticed
things
that
about getting cancer. But
people retreat. Sometimes I would tell people that I was waiting to find out if I had to get chemo, and they would tiptoe backwards, literally out of my life.
just
I hear, yeah, I hear so many people go through that. It
yeah,
was really, really
it's like a
bizarre.
Family Guy moment of just slowly backing away. Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
would
Oh,
mention the
well,
big C. Yeah,
I was going to ask you, like, because you grew up in Calgary, and one
sure did.
doesn't think of that as like an epicenter for theater, but it really is. Like, you hit theater royalty with Keith Johnstone, and like, really, you hit theater royalty right away. It's like you're
Oh yeah,
magnetized.
absolutely. Like right from the very start, there was Alberta Theatre Projects, Theatre Calgary, One Yellow Rabbit, Quest Theatre, Shakespeare in the Park. When I was at, I mean, I was really lucky. The 2 year conservatory program at Mount Royal. Um, it just taught me absolutely everything. We got put through every single department as actors, quote unquote. But we'd be on stage, we'd be backstage, we'd be figuring out lighting designs, we'd be sewing buttons on shirts, we would be, doing theater history and all of that. And then on top of that, they would bring in professional, like working professionals from the community to come in and teach our professional development classes and direct shows. I met John Morrell, who is a Governor General Award playwright, award-winning playwright, and he became a mentor of mine. He directed a show in my second year at Mount Royal, and then he came back and directed Romeo and Juliet in '95, and then he mentored me as a playwright for the next year. And I
Oh my
mean,
God.
the incredible wealth of skill and knowledge and talent, and then on top of that, just the willingness to what's the expression? I guess send the elevator back down. I don't know if we can use that anymore. That's a Kevin Spacey thing, but anyway.
Oh,
But yeah, helping out the next generation, because that's going to be the seed of a flourishing theater community. My passion for theater for young audiences started when I was in grade 3, when I saw Quest Theater come to my school, and they did a show in my gymnasium. They absolutely blew me away there. I was grade 3, whatever that is, like 8 years old, and the gymnasium is transformed, and they're doing this incredible play with music and lights and sound, and I walked out of there and this is what I want to do. I want to write for
oh,
this.
so
Um,
you knew you were an artist at the age of 8, probably before then, right?
oh, it was probably in the womb. I'd say in vitro, but that's a bit early. I mean, come on. No, it was really young, and I owe that to my family. My dad was an artist and an English teacher and a drama teacher, and he loved improvisation. And mom is a writer. She's a musician, a singer, a painter, a dancer, all of the above. And my 3 older brothers are all involved in the arts as well. So
Oh, wow.
you can't really escape it when you're when you're surrounded by that on the daily. Um, so yeah, it was very, very young. I mean, I couldn't even tell you when I first started playing the piano or the guitar, or writing and drawing and all of that. It's just been a part of my life since the very beginning.
Oh,
Mhm.
that's wonderful. Oh my God. I envy that. I envy that. I've never had that, but I think that's great that you did.
Mm.
Um, when I first met you, you turned on the Zoom and your eyes just blew me away. I was just like mesmerized by your eyes, and you started to tell me about them. Tell the audience, because it's so beautiful.
Well, my right eye is actually artificial. So this was created by Shirley Wayland, Dr. Shirley Wayland in Calgary, Alberta. She's a ocular prosthetic technician, artist. I mean, it's really a work of art. So
Yeah.
I get a new one of these every 7 or 8 years or so.
Mm.
And so I give full credit to Dr. Wayland for that. And
But you
then yeah,
matched your
my
other eye color perfect.
oh yeah, she does just incredible work, really, and there's such detail in it. And then yeah, my left eye, it was irradiated when I was about 18 months old, and then a cataract developed, so I had cataract surgery when I was about 4.5. And yeah, I basically see 9% vision, so that's a very, very narrow window, like looking down a straw. And then I have a lot of floaters, and it's kind of like looking down a straw through like an old lava lamp, if you will, just constantly moving and shifting. See lots of floaters and see lots of flashers and things like that. Not flashers, but
That would be an
that
amazing
would
way to live.
something else entirely. Yeah, so a lot of visual distortions when I also see auras around things. So there's a radiation of light and energy around objects in space for me. Mhm.
Oh, wow. And when we had first met, I never knew you were a painter and I hadn't seen your paintings. And I assumed you couldn't see me at all. And at one point you said, take off your glasses. And I was like, what? You can see that I have glasses on. And so then when I saw your paintings, I'm like, oh, you just, they reflect the way that you see, right? The way that you see people.
Yeah, the painting project started in 2011, and it was really an attempt to try to capture the way that I see. I sat with an old friend of mine who had no idea that I'm visually impaired. He saw me with a cane for the very first time. I mean, I rejected using a white cane until I was in my early 30s, just out of ego
Amazing.
or whatever,
Amazing.
terror. And yeah, this old friend of mine saw me with a cane and was asking what was up. So I said, sit down and I'll paint a picture of you as I see you. And I became fascinated by how acrylic paint can get texture and depth and is just so surprising and goes in a really visual way into something that is kind of ethereal. And the other thing I really loved about the portrait and continue to love about the portrait project is that we get to have conversations and we get to sit and actually connect over an hour or hour and a half, depending on how long the sitting is. But a real conversation that is authentic and tends to break down a lot of barriers. So I've done 635 portraits now
Oh.
over, and I've moved on to Zoom. So that's kind of one of the huge benefits, I guess, of the pandemic shift is that everyone's now totally comfortable sitting in front of their computer and looking at a screen. But yeah, it's become a real daily practice for me that I just absolutely love. I mean, painting on its own can be quite a solitary act, and it's not to say that I don't enjoy that. I mean, when I paint a landscape and kind of go into the solitary expression of it, it's quite lovely, and time just passes so quickly. But the portrait projects are a great way to mark the time and to connect with people.
Well, you're obviously an amazing conversationalist. We had a really, really good talk when you were coaching me, and
Oh,
we
thanks,
continue.
Daniela.
Yeah, you continue to be very engaging. How you're aiming to do 1,000? Or are you going to keep going after 1,000?
Oh, probably. I set the thousand in 2011, and funnily, I had heard this idea that to master something, you have to practice it for 10,000 hours, and I thought if I did 1,000 portraits that I would master it. I mean, I'm nowhere close to that mastery, but I'm getting closer to 1,000. Um, although initially I thought it was 1,000 hours, and I figured I could have that done by the end of the year. Thankfully, someone corrected me.
Yes, and I mean I think that's just really a number someone came up with. I know Malcolm Gladwell popularized it, but someone else initiated it. But I mean,
Mm.
like your work is stunning. Like all your landscapes, all your portraits. How does it work if someone wants to have a sitting with you?
Oh, it's very easy. Just through my website, brucehorak.com. There's a little calendar, and you can pick a time and sign up for it, and then you get sent a Zoom link and a couple of instructions about the sitting. And then we sit together for about 45 minutes, 50 minutes or so, and have a conversation. I record the sitting, take a few screenshots, and then I do a digital drawing. So I'll be sitting and we'll just chat and I'll take notes. I won't be sketching during the sitting. And then I do a digital drawing, which can be emailed directly. And then if you'd like as well, I can do an acrylic painting of it as well. Mm.
Oh, nice, nice. And do people like buy the painting from you, or do they just pay you and then you keep them? Because I noticed you display them at different art galleries, right?
I do, yeah. It really just depends on whether or not somebody wants to hang the thing in their home. I've got I've got probably 300 by 10 portraits sitting around, which is great because yeah, they look really nice together. I did a
Yeah.
couple of showings where we had 200 of the 8 by 10s all in a lovely grid, and yeah, it's lovely. For me, it looks like a really really personal yearbook where you know everybody in the yearbook. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you got Mump and Smoot to pose for you, right? And
Oh
well,
yeah.
they probably
Yeah.
came to you and said, "Pay me."
They actually invited Mike and John were doing a show at Alberta Theatre Projects, and they invited me to come early and watch their warm up and take photos, and then sit with them in the dressing room while they were getting ready, and we had a lovely chat. And from that sitting and some of those photographs, I got to do their portraits, and yeah, it means a lot to me. Mhm.
That's awesome. Did and we sort of jumped past the your theater life. I want to talk about it more because you've done so many, and you just did well, not just, but about you did the thing in Calgary, the Shakespeare.
Oh, Goblin Macbeth.
Yes,
Yes.
I could remember.
So Rebecca North and I created this show called Goblin Macbeth. And the essential premise is that three goblins discover a copy of the complete works of William Shakespeare. And they're confused, and they don't really in this particular goblin culture they don't understand theater and pretending. And so after reading Hamlet's advice to the players on acting, they decide that, no, this seems pretty easy, we can do this. And then they pick one of the plays. They pick Macbeth because it's the shortest and the bloodiest. So they hijack a theater and they hold the audience captive. They force a technician to run lights and sound, and they kind of coerce the audience along as they present their production of Goblin Macbeth. We got these three incredible goblin masks from a company. I think they're in, I want to say Texas, but Composite Effects is what they're called, and they do like movie quality mask work. That, I mean, they're just incredible. They sort of roll on and they just suction to your face, and they're really like, and you can be quite articulate with them with the eyebrows and the cheeks and everything. Um, so we got these three masks, and we had just an absolute riot doing the show. I mean, it's got a reverence to the story, but we really take the piss out of Shakespeare and about acting and theater and just the whole notion of, you know, getting on stage and pretending that you're somebody else. And yeah, there's a meta quality to it, but it was a lot of fun. We did one high school matinee in Calgary, and they just ate it up. I mean, the notion of goblins doing Macbeth, it worked so well. Yeah.
And you had a run in Calgary, but are you ever going to take it to Toronto?
Oh yeah, yeah. We'll say irons are in the fire.
Yay, I gotta come see
I
that.
think that one's got legs. Yeah, it's got
Yeah.
legs.
Sounded like it. But okay, so you've had a lot of magic moments on stage in Canada. Were there
Mm.
like there had to be lows because every Canadian actor goes through the lows. Because you've been at it for 25 years. Like,
Hmm.
how does one, just for the people in the audience who are stuck in their careers, how does one last?
How does one last? Ooh, well, I guess for me, it comes down to community.
Mm,
Um, I was really fortunate in Calgary that I met my mentors early on and my colleagues early on, and I really made that choice to keep working with people and finding the people that had a common kind of groove and language. I'm just, yeah, I was really lucky in that way. So it was finding collaborators like Ryan Gladstone and Duval Lang and John Morrell and Rebecca Northam that, it's really kept me very busy because when I'm not working, it just can become a bit of a slog, you know. And when you're not working, the only thought is I'll never work again.
yeah.
So having irons in the fire at all time is really important, even if it's just a notebook going with a few ideas that you kind of go back to and look at every day. Because yeah, there's like nothing comes of an unplanted field. And you just gotta keep going back and tilling the soil and putting the plants in and putting the seeds in and tending it, because eventually that stuff will come back, and it'll be uh it's never it's never what I expected, but it's always what I need.
Mm,
And yeah, it's funny, I was looking back on, I've been a journaler since I was in junior high or high school, and I was looking back at my journals from the late '90s, and there I was working summers at Shakespeare in the Park and winters with Quest Theater, and as soon as a gig would end, I would be in that depths of, this is never going to happen again. I'm never going to work again. And then a day later, it was like, oh, and I was off to do this thing and pick this thing up, and there it was. And so, just saying yes to all of those opportunities, um, and yeah, again, finding your your collaborative family, I think, is essential to it.
Oh, that's great. But yet you move around a lot. Like I
Sure
read
do.
that you call yourself a hobo sapient,
Mm.
which I totally relate to as well. I relate to everything you just said, actually. I feel like you just explained myself to me, like why I'm I can't stop. Otherwise I'll remember that I'm not working.
Mm.
But moving around so much with 9% vision, I just can't even imagine it. Did it ever impact you? I guess it did,
Oh
right?
yeah. Well, I mean, when I first started out, I mean, I was in grade 11, I think, and I had decided that I wanted to do street performing, and so I would take my guitar and go downtown Calgary and stand on the street corner and sing. But I was certain that this was a really bad idea for a visually impaired kid. So
Oh,
I I mean, I would say I coerced my friend Rich, but he was a willing participant, and he and I would go down and sing together. And I would have these dreams of like, yeah, we'll pack up our stuff and we'll go across the country and we'll busk on street corners and we'll become like the bare naked ladies and we'll get discovered and or the violent femmes and we're going to be like the next ones discovered outside of an arena busking or whatever. But I was absolutely certain that I wouldn't be able to do this on my own. And then along comes the iPhone and GPS and this incredible technology that we have now, where as a visually impaired person, I can, like the world has opened up to me now. Like when I'm in a new city. I've got the GPS that's going to guide me to my location. I've got the magnifier on my phone so I can read the street signs across the way, or, the boarding signs at the airport, or, even the very, very simple technology of the white cane, which I refused for most of my life, but just being willing to accept that technology. I mean, it's really adaptive. And when I have my white cane and I walk into an airport, it's like the doors have opened to me and there are people right there who recognize it, see what it means, see that I might need some help. And instead of me staggering around and explaining, listen, I don't see very well, could you help me with this thing, it's like, oh, the cane does that explaining for me. And so again, that the world is opening up, and the acceptance and the inclusion of this technology is making it so much easier for everyone. And I think that there's an adage about designing for disability, is that when you design for disability, you design for everyone.
yes, yes. Wow. Um, wow. Because I know people who won't travel even with full vision and full,
Oh, sure. Yeah.
and it's like, how do you live? So that's so inspiring. Do you, okay, so all of a sudden, well, did it feel like all of a sudden, 25 years later, you're on Star Trek?
Boom. This is the graphic for my head exploding. Yeah. What a wild thing. And how do you describe it? It's just I guess the best way to describe it is leveling up. Um, 25 years in the industry, I have done pretty much pretty much everything I've had to do in the last 2 years, but on a very small scale, like signing autographs after a kid show. There is an element of uh, there's an element of that I still witness with the signing autographs after a Star Trek convention or after a Star Trek premiere, but it's just so much bigger now. Like, it's the little 8-year-old coming up with their notebook saying, "Can I get your autograph?" after a show, and you have a moment of connection and ask a question and whatever, and just kind of connect with them. But now it's like they've got a stack of photos of your face that they've printed up on really lovely cardstock, and it's not just one; it's like 15, and the conversations are deeper because you're talking to. A fan of Star Trek that might be going back with 20 years of canon, and so you can, and certainly for me, with a great love of the franchise, it's like I
Oh
could
yeah, I
sit and
meant to
talk
ask.
to one
Yeah.
person for an hour. It's like, oh, I gotta move along, gotta move along. That and doing interviews and doing media and press. It's like I've done all of this before, but now it's doing interviews like 3 or 4 times a week, or
Oh my
sometimes
God.
3 times a day, doing autograph sessions and posting about the show, and answering fan mail. I do like an hour of fan mail every morning now,
Oh,
which is
wow.
amazing. I mean, people are reaching out from all over the world, and I guess that's what it is that the scope of it is so much larger. Um, and the love of this franchise is just, it's incredible. Like even the sort of nitpicky stuff is still coming from a place of great love and affection. And on that level, I go, absolutely, like this doesn't make sense. And like kind of getting into those conversations, it actually is kind of a lot of fun. But that's all just a beautiful nerding out, which is yeah, it's pretty amazing. I feel really lucky to be a part of it.
Oh my God. So it premiered last month. So your life is
Yeah.
different in that it's much busier. Is there any other difference?
uh yeah, well, it's just busier. It's just busier. It's like every day there's another element of the of my career that's asking something of me. Whereas
Mhm.
before I was the one putting the coal on the fire. It's like now the fire is coming to me a little bit, and that's
Oh,
that's really exciting. It's really really nice to have that because, and I know so many artists who say this. It's like it's just so nice to be asked. It's so nice to be wanted, and in a way, that's like one of the greatest adrenaline rushes is just seeing your name on the call board next to the
mhm.
part. It's like, yeah, they want me. They see me. They acknowledge my existence, and that, yeah, that's kind of the greatest thing. Because again, like after 25 years of being the one to create the show, or being the one to have the idea, or being the one to pay for the entrance fee into the theater festival, or standing outside of a venue and flyering the audience, or trying to get word of mouth going, and all, like doing all of that work. It feels like, oh, okay, so now karmically it's kind of coming back to me a little bit, and
Oh,
yeah,
it's
it's
so
pretty nice.
affirming.
It's
It's
pretty nice.
it's so inspiring for everyone out there who's slogging it out too. Like, wow, it is like you've really manifested when you talked about signing the autographs for the kids. Like, back in Calgary, it's like you manifested the Star Trek conferences and everything.
I hate to
Um,
think of what my signature looked like back then, though. They'll have to authenticate it. They'll have to authenticate it.
It says we've got a couple of people live, and
Oh,
I don't
great.
know if people have questions for Bruce, but this is your opportunity to ask him because he's doing another interview today. So, because that's how busy he is. So I want I want to make sure if there are questions that people get to ask. I don't see any in the chat. I could talk to Bruce all day and all night. I wanted to ask you on set
Hmm.
if like what that was like because you haven't been on a film set in a long time, right?
Well, I did background work on a commercial
Mhm.
once. That was ridiculous. And then I did a day on a show called Warehouse 13.
Oh, I did that show. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was Philo Farnsworth, who was the inventor of the Farnsworth, which was the device they. Anyway, we won't go nerdy on that, but I did a day on that show, and that was probably in about 2010, I want to say. And then I
Mhm.
did a short film called Gitch, which was an indie film that shot in this. Oh man, it was this hilarious sort of housing complex in Hamilton, I want to say,
They're
and
always in Hamilton.
yeah, it was so the main story was taking place in this one apartment, and the story was of this guy who's trying to write his master's thesis, and every time he's trying to write, he looks out his window and he sees this guy come out across on the other side of the housing complex, come out onto his balcony, and he's in his underwear and he starts exercising. So I was that guy. And so during the shoot, I want to say we shot for about 2 days, maybe 3 days, while the main crew was over in the very nicely furnished apartment shooting the main story, I would sit over in this unfurnished apartment across the way with a production assistant who had a walkie-talkie, and I would sit there in a robe and my tidy whities, and I would wait for a go, and I would go out on the balcony and jump up and down while. And many people in the housing complex found out that we were shooting this thing. So anytime I would step out on the balcony, they'd come out and smoke and watch me jump up and down in my grippies. So that was quite the experience. And then, I went on hiatus. I retired for about 10 years after that.
It sounds like Foof made an appearance in that movie.
He may have. But then, yeah, getting onto set with Star Trek was, I mean, the just the extensive resources that they have. They gave me an assistant who was with me through the entire day, from the moment that I showed up on set to the moment that I got in the van to go home. There was somebody with me who was there to say, step here, watch there's a cable here and there's a lighting here. And then I'd get onto set and they would tell me where the camera was going to be. They would talk me through my eye lines, and they would walk me through all of the technology and how to make it look like I can actually read the stuff and the telepathic. And we got into all of those conversations. And then all of the actors as well, like they would go cut, and oftentimes before the assistant could even get to me, one of the other actors would just say, let me help you out, and I've got your arm or whatever, and they would just kind of
Oh,
walk me back to, and it was just like, and people right away would be introducing themselves. So I don't see faces very well, so it takes me a while to remember to recognize your voice. And the human voice, while many and varied, oftentimes can sound the same depending on the environment and the conditions. So
mhm.
people would just say, hey, listen, it's Daniela or whatever, and then this way I would know immediately. And so any of that awkwardness, any of that feeling of me having to work a little harder to stay in the pack, that was gone. I didn't have to
Oh,
work all that much harder. I got to show up and do my work. And I hope that the work ethic that I have, I want to say honed, but it's still rough hewn, shall we say. While I'm working on that, it really gave me an appreciation for how much a helping hand can make us all succeed
oh.
better.
Yes, that's wonderful. Um, oh, it's funny. The people that are watching, I don't reckon they must be your fans from Star Trek because they're not my students. So,
Oh,
Alex or Dylan, if you have any questions, please feel free to
any
ask.
questions? We're
Oh,
here.
and Emer's here. One of my students showed up just now and sent hearts. Because
Hello.
because we got 5 more minutes, and then I'm gonna let Bruce prepare for his next.
5 more minutes. Wow. Oh, this is just absolutely flown by. Thanks, Daniela. This is great.
Yeah, well, no, like
Yeah.
you're such a great conversationalist. That's why I
I
called
should
it.
have been doing a portrait while we were sitting here. We could have
Oh
something
my
to show
God.
for. Well, no, we'll have something to show, but you know what I mean.
Oh, one day I'm gonna
Yeah.
pay for a sitting. I think they're absolutely lovely and beautiful.
Thank
Yeah,
you. Thank you.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's see, do I have any more questions? It's so funny because when you were in theater, I was on film sets for 30 years. Now that you're on set, I'm away from set, so we didn't ever
Hmm.
get a chance to work together. So that makes me sad, but also I'm so appreciative that Rebecca
Hmm.
introduced us. Because I
It's
think
the wonders of social media. Eh? Yeah.
oh, were you guys going to do the show in Stratford too? Or because you live there now? Am I allowed to say that you live there now?
Oh yeah, yeah. We're in Stratford. We're currently in, let's say, we're in negotiations for what will happen with the Goblin show in the future. I believe we have confirmed that we're going back to Calgary. Yes, I can say this. So we're going back to Calgary to do a 3 week run of the Goblin Macbeth in end of September, early October. And then also, just to rewind a little bit, but this July, I'm going to be at the National Arts Centre in Canada, in Ottawa,
Oh,
doing my one man show, Assassinating Thompson, for a week there. And I'm also doing sort of guest appearing in a monster theater, which is my early collaborators. They're coming out to the Toronto Fringe in July, so I'll be stepping into the role of William Shakespeare in Juliet, a revenge comedy. So that's July, and August is, I don't know. I'll go to Mexico or something.
can you? We have time for that, right? Yes, I want to know about assassinating Thompson.
Sure.
Yeah.
Assassinating Thompson is a solo show where I paint a portrait of the entire audience, live and on stage, while I tell the story of how I became one of Canada's only legally blind visual artists, and I solve the mystery of who killed Tom Thompson.
Oh,
Tom Thompson was a Canadian painter who died mysteriously in 1917, and his body surfaced in a lake 8 days after he disappeared. And to this day, they have no idea. There is much speculation about what happened to him. And so, in Assassinating Thompson, I tell that story, and all this sort of serendipitous stuff starts to come out as I talk about the story because Tom and I have the same birthday, which is August 5th. We lived in the same neighborhood in Toronto around Yonge and Wellesley. And one of the people suspected of having killed Tom Thompson was a man named Shannon Fraser, which was the name of my high school girlfriend.
oh my God.
And the coincidences go on from there. And at the end of the show, I turn the portrait around and then we auction off the painting at the end of the show and we donate the proceeds to a local charity. I've been touring the show since 2013. And my last run of the show, we raised over $3,500 for a local charity in Blythe, Ontario.
Oh, incredible. Wow, you might be the reincarnation of Tom Tom. You might, no,
I hope
really.
so. I hope
Even
so.
your landscapes, like, wow,
Well,
wow,
he's a
wow.
huge influence, you know.
Mhm.
The Thompson's work and the Group of Seven. I mean, that's just yeah. It was my high school art teachers. I mean, she had this is Connie Tasinski. I've got to put her name out there because
Yeah.
thanks, Connie. But she had posters all over the wall of Group of Seven and Tom Thompson paintings, and she was a huge fan. She was actually the one who told me the mysterious drowning story and the ghost of Tom Thompson story, which was great because it was a Catholic school. So there we were talking about ghosts and hauntings. It's terrifying. But to me, oh, I can't say that. I was going to say the Holy Spirit is Tom Thompson, but that seems like sacrilege. Anyway,
I
there's
went to
lightning.
Catholic school. I get that. I get that. I'm very obsessed with
Yes,
ghosts and spirits. Wow. Well, okay. I'm going to let you prep for your next. There don't seem to be any questions, but
that's
thank
all right.
you.
My
Thank you for your
pleasure,
time,
Daniela. Oh,
which has become infinitely more valuable since we met.
that's lovely. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay. And people can get in touch with you at brucehorak.com, right?
You got it. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Right on.
I'm going to try to see your show in Ottawa in July. That sounds incredible.
Fantastic.